Hello, and welcome to the Nature Disturb podcast, a podcast about the good, the offensive, and the confusing parts of the animal kingdom. This podcast was recorded on the land of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present. This episode contains strong language and adult themes. Before we delve into today's topic, let's start with some quick housekeeping. Whew. I'm glad to have got all that out the way. That will satiate my OCD for at least half an hour. As ever, if you would like to see the companion artwork to this episode, you can find it at Nature Disturbed on Instagram. And now for some thanks and a desperate plea. If you've been listening along to the Nature Disturbed podcast, then a very heartfelt thank you from me and the team here at Nature Disturbed Studios. By studios, I mean my attic. By team, I mean the cockroach I saw here the other day. And by me, I mean myself and the 17 personalities living inside my head. We're so glad you're enjoying listening to these episodes. We're enjoying making them. Now, I'm not going to ask you to share the podcast with a friend. I'm going to beg you, please. I have dogs to feed, and by dogs I mean my ego. You can't see me, but I'm knelt in the sink like a subservient dog with my paws up, eyes widened, hoping in desperation that this is doing something for you. And again, I'm not asking you to share this with a friend. It could be a friend you share it with, but most importantly, I'd like you to share it with the stupidest person you know, because they need it the most. So, you identify that person in your life who is a clueless, babbling idiot, and you say to them, "Hey Deborah, you need a healthy side of digestible science in that diet of yours, which otherwise includes large servings of AI slop and affirmations from TikTok self-help gurus." And then you should start flailing your arms in all directions and exclaim, "For the love of God, Deborah, check out the Nature Disturbed podcast. The crazy man in the sink told me to tell you." And hopefully Deborah will listen. As I mentioned, I'm sat in my kitchen sink. Today, I'm wearing a tinfoil hat. Not only will this hat protect me from electromagnetic fields and government mind control, but it also looks very cozy. This look is an homage to one of the most enticing and enduring conspiracy theories, the Loch Ness Monster. Now, I know what you're thinking, but Rachel, this is a science podcast, and the Loch Ness Monster isn't real. Well, first of all, my name's not Rachel. And second, it is real. I saw it. Just kidding. But the fact that it's not real doesn't mean we can't learn from it. Today isn't simply going to be me debunking sightings and explaining why this conspiracy isn't true. I will touch on those things, but at the heart of today's episode will be the idea that sometimes leaning into the unbelievable is not just good for the soul, but it can also be a jumping off point for connecting with the natural world and learning about science. Yes, science. I promise I haven't suddenly gone mad overnight. No. For me, going mad was a very long process which took years. But truly, science. I believe there is a sliding scale of conspiracies, from the idea that Elvis is still alive and living on an island with Princess Diana, all the way to anti-vax ideas and Holocaust denial. Although they're all batshit mental, they're not all equally harmful. I, for one, celebrate a conspiracy that makes people look beyond their screens and feel exhilarated, which promotes tourism and walking in nature, and which inspires young scientists. For decades, the world's most cutting-edge scientific technologies have been applied to investigate Loch Ness. I'm sure at least one child within the past century has been somewhat inspired by the story to go on to develop an interest in science. In fact, I dare say I was one of those children. The Loch Ness Monster and I are, after all, from the same island home of Great Britain. I have seen Loch Ness with my own eyes. felt the alluring presence of that great body of water, and imagined, fearfully and in wonder, what lies beneath its dark surface. Here's a quote from Terry Pratchett's Hogfather. "Humans need fantasy to be human, to be the place where the falling angel meets the rising ape." And with that, I shall pass you back to my past self. Not sure about that second comma in there. For the sake of making absolutely sure that the myth is just a myth, I went to see if I could see the Loch Ness Monster for myself. Hello, it's me. I'm just dragging a little boat along a pebbly beach and getting it into the water here at Loch Ness. I've dragged this thing all the way from Melbourne, which is 16,900 kilometres away as the crow flies. Come to think of it, I probably could have just found a boat rental here. Loch Ness is a world-famous tourist destination. But no regrets. I listened to the 50 Shades audiobook on the way here, and I consider that to be time well spent. I've arrived here at late afternoon, so I'll have a few good hours of sunlight to carry out the investigation. This beach here is part of a roughly 80-kilometre stretch of shoreline around this loch, which is extremely long and very thin, like my friend Jonathan's, never mind. It has a length of 36.2 kilometres and a maximum width of 2.7 kilometres. That's Loch Ness, not Jonathan's. Anyway, the loch is longer than the distance between France and England. We're in the Scottish Highlands, about 10 kilometres southwest of Inverness. Around me, large boulders stand, covered in lichen, clear cold water lapping about them, as well as against my bare feet. Ooh, freezing. I'll stand out of the water. Good job I brought an extra pair of socks with me. Around the water, the highlands rise into rolling hills of orange and yellow, as oak, birch and hazel prepare for the winter, and patches of the evergreen Scots pine stand firm against the oncoming chill. Between the woodland, grassy fields and bracken, the occasional lighthouse, village, or even the ruin of a castle. As I take in a deep breath of clean autumnal air, I wonder to myself, what will be at the top of my Spotify Wrapped this year? Popular, No One Mourns the Wicked, or Defying Gravity? I know for a fact that it won't be that goat song, but as I stand here reflecting, I also wonder, why do my eyes keep going back to the water? That imposing, dark body of water. There's something about it which is undoubtedly alluring, like it's tempting me in. I know the Loch Ness Monster isn't real, but now I'm standing here, I can't help but want to believe. I want to be wrong. Well, I suppose there's nothing more to it. Let's head out there and see probably nothing. I'll just give this boat a push. Ah, beautiful. There she goes. Oh shit, I forgot to get inside it. Oh. Great. And we're off. I think I'll begin with an explanation of the words loch and ness. Ness is the name of the short river which connects Loch Ness to the sea. Loch, which I may pronounce properly or not, interchangeably, means lake in Scottish and Irish Gaelic. It also refers to what might otherwise be called a fjord, a narrow but deep valley carved out by glaciers, and which connects to the sea. Loch Ness is part of the Great Glen Fault, a line carved through Scotland. If you take a look at an image of Britain from above, particularly in winter when the dark water contrasts with the white of the snow, it's very easy to see it slicing across Britain like a huge geological scar. The fault was active about 410 million years ago, and it was scoured again 10,000 years ago by enormous glaciers, leaving behind them a series of deep valleys and lakes, including Loch Ness. Loch Ness is by far the greatest of the lakes and freshwater lochs in the UK by volume. It contains more water than all of the lakes in England and Wales combined. And Loch Ness is the second deepest body of water in the UK, with a maximum depth of 230 metres, after Loch Morar. That's very deep indeed. There's just a thin little layer of metal and plastic between me and the loch. Beneath me, hundreds of metres of water. Let's look over the side and see what we can see. I'm apprehensive. What if she's found us, Nessie, and she's looking right back? Here I go. Oh, thank God. It's just my reflection. And beyond my reflection, the water is very dark. It looks almost black to me. Murky. There could be a big fish just a few metres below and I wouldn't even know it. Nothing, after all, is impossible. Apart from a Katy Perry redemption arc at this point. I think that's impossible. The earliest record of a monster in the area doesn't come from the loch itself, but from the River Ness. And it dates back 1.5 millennia to the year 565 AD. The story was told by Saint Columba, an Irish evangelist, who can take some of the credit, or blame, for spreading Christianity to Scotland. So the story goes, a water monster appeared in the River Ness and began attacking some men who were swimming in the river, at which point Saint Columba made the sign of the Holy Cross and warded the creature away, causing it to return to the depths of the Scottish wilderness. The story perhaps paints a picture of how Scotland was viewed by evangelical Christians at the time. And if you're wondering, is it true that people in Britain are mad enough to swim in its chilly lochs and lakes? Then the answer is yes, it's true. I have been one of those people. And if you want to know why, it's because getting underwater is the only place you can escape the constant rain. Now, the fact that there are reports of monsters in this area across millennia might indicate that there's some truth behind the legend. That's a long time to have repeated monster sightings. But to that, I'd say there is no place in Scotland that isn't steeped in a rich folkloric history stretching back centuries, if not into prehistory. You could throw a stone in the Highlands and it would land on a place to which buckets of ancient lore has been ascribed, although I wouldn't recommend throwing stones here. As I mentioned, this is a tourist hotspot, so you'd probably end up hitting a hiker or a child on a school trip. So perhaps the story of St. Columba is not the sign it might first appear to be. Indeed, since that fateful attack, it's not as though there has been a constant slew of monster sightings in and around these waters. They have been intermittent over the centuries, but I dare say a perfectly normal number of monster sightings if you please, until we get to 1933. Oh, here we go, 1933. This is the year in which things really started to get crazy. In April of this year, Mr. and Mrs. Mackay were driving alongside the loch, stopping when they saw the most unlikely of things 3/4 of a mile from the shore. What they saw would go on to be reported by the water bailiff of Loch Ness and part-time journalist Alex Campbell in the Inverness Courier, in an article which would trigger a series of sightings lasting to this day. According to the report,
there the creature disported itself, rolling and plunging for fully a minute, its body resembling that of a whale, and the water cascading and churning like a shimmering cauldron. Soon, however, it disappeared into a boiling mass of foam. Both onlookers confessed there was something uncanny about the whole thing, for they realized that here was no ordinary denizen of the depths, because, apart from its enormous size, the beast, in taking the final plunge, sent out waves that were big enough to have been caused by a passing streamer.
a thrilling article indeed, and one which quickly became a national story. It was also proof that claiming a sighting could get your name in the paper. After the article was published, more couples like the Spicers, the Greys and the Grants made various claims. Some reports came back that the monster was amphibious, as it was seen on land and taking livestock. Based on these reports, the image of the monster began to settle on that of a small head, a long neck, and 4 flippers, essentially the image of the ancient reptile, the plesiosaur. In the century prior, figures like Mary Anning had uncovered the fossils of long extinct creatures which had gradually worked their way into the public consciousness. It seems like people might have been applying the science of the time to justify their claims. We know that these animals existed once because we have their fossilized remains, so maybe, just maybe, one of them slipped through deep time into the modern era, protected within the seemingly timeless waters of this great lake. Here's another important piece of context. King Kong was released in 1933, quickly establishing itself as a cultural cornerstone, and featuring a scene in which a long-necked dinosaur rises from the water. I'm just saying. Now, let's pause, take stock, and bark like a dog. Sorry, I meant let's pause, take stock, and apply some science. Well, the idea that a late surviving plesiosaur might have been hiding out in Loch Ness, avoiding extinction, doesn't quite stack up when we think about the age of Loch Ness, having formed at the end of the last ice age around 10,000 years ago. Plesiosaurs did indeed once inhabit Britain, back when it was a series of islands in warm and shallow seas. But this ancient lineage of reptiles went extinct with the dinosaurs 66 million years ago. So that leaves, let's do some quick maths. That means the Loch Ness Monster would have had to float around for 65,990,000 years waiting for Loch Ness to appear before coming to seek refuge. It's possible. Anything is possible apart from a Katy Perry redemption arc. Again, I'm just saying it's not the most likely thing ever. It's more likely than, me going to watch football, let's say, but not as likely as, for instance, me falling asleep if I was made to watch the football. There's also the neck problem. At the time that these sightings kicked off, Nessie was often seen with her neck standing vertically, almost swan-like, her head high above the water. This happens to correspond with outdated reconstructions of plesiosaurs at the time, back when their necks were believed to be flexible. We now think, however, that plesiosaurs likely would have held their necks horizontally, and though they may have been able to bend their necks downward, to raise them up and back like that of a swan would be a biomechanical disaster, rendering them unable to strike the kind of pose long attributed to the Loch Ness Monster. Again, not impossible. For example, if I wanted to, I could wrap my leg around my head, but I would probably pass out from the pain and not be able to put it back. There's also one more part of the late surviving plesiosaur theory that begs questioning, if I may be so bold, and that's the fact that plesiosaurs are reptiles, and as such, they would need to be surfacing regularly to breathe. It feels, therefore, like if the Loch Ness Monster was a plesiosaur, then we'd be seeing it every few hours. It is, after all, probably the lake with the most eyes on it in the world. And, speaking of eyes on, Captain of the SS Nature Disturbed here reporting for duty. I'll look starboard, no sign of the monster. Port, no monster. Bow and stern, all clear. I'm not sure which direction is which, so I'm just spinning my head around like the girl in The Exorcist. Very good. Captain? Yes, Captain. Where was I, Captain? Well, Captain, you took a detour into plesiosaurs, but you were discussing the boom in sightings around 1933, which leads you to 1934, and the surgeons say no more, Captain. That's right. We're in 1934. The British press are jumping on stories of monster sightings. City folk in London are thrilled to hear the idea that, on the very same island as them, a living fossil might be hiding in the murky depths. Sir Edward Mortimer Mountain, a wealthy marine insurance specialist, has 20 men stationed around the loch, 9 p.m. to 6 p.m, for 5 weeks. In the first proper investigation into the Loch Ness Monster, the photos produced by the investigation were not good. And then, months later, the most enduring piece of Loch Ness history was produced. It's called The Surgeon's Photograph, and it's the most iconic photo ever taken of a piece of plastic attached to a toy submarine. I mean, it's the most iconic photo ever taken of the real-life Loch Ness Monster. Yes, 100%. The photo was published in the Daily Mail, which is the first red flag. It's called The Surgeon's Photograph because it was given to the paper by gynecologist Robert Kenneth Wilson, who wished to remain anonymous. Although it might seem difficult to believe, Many people truly believed that this was genuine photographic evidence of the creature's existence. This was only happening just over a decade after the famous photo of the Cottingley fairies, with many people in this case too believing what they were seeing with their very eyes, including none other than esteemed author Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Perhaps a good way to put it into context we could relate to today is how people over a certain age might believe that the artificially generated cat they're watching dance to Hips Don't Lie is actually dancing, because they can see it. Look, it's shaking its little cat hips. Alas, sometimes the rate of technological advancements, if you can call that an advancement, is greater than the rate at which we're able to stop and reflect and ask ourselves, is this the truth? Or is it just wishful thinking? Wishful thinking is a very powerful thing, and it makes people see what they wish to see. It's like how I see Tom Daly every time I open my wardrobe, and how every time my nephew makes me watch a Mr. Beast video, I just see a blank screen. It's because I wish for those things, and my feeble human brain makes them a reality. What was that? I'm sure I'm just illustrating my own point. We see things that aren't there and hear them too. I'm sure it was just a wave or a stick or a fish or something. Word on the internet is that in a 1990s deathbed confession made by sculpture specialist Christian Sperling, the surgeon's photograph was the result of an elaborate hoax orchestrated by Sperling's stepfather, Marmaduke Wetherell, a big game hunter from Leeds. Photographic analysis based on the ripples of the water against the size of the creature also indicated the scale of the photograph, revealing that the object was in fact small and not a monster. And the other thing that suggested it was all in fact a hoax was the fact that, hello, obviously it's a hoax. Let's all get real, everybody. Ooh. Nearly threw myself overboard there. Very fun indeed. But any belief that that photo was genuine had to be left behind in the 20th century. Although, as the sun's setting, and I'm glancing about my little boat, I am noticing the way the light dances across the water. It's flickering in such a way that, if I squint a little bit, and if I want to see something more, which I do, then I might mistake it for a long serpentine body, undulating across the surface. And there's a long branch floating, or perhaps a marine reptile. And since the construction of the Caledonian Canal in 1820, large ships have been moving through the loch, leaving big wakes or perhaps long thin monsters. It's been suggested that the Loch Ness Monster might be a known animal. Though the waters here don't constitute the most productive ecosystem, and they aren't bursting with life, there are of course fish living here, such as salmon, pike, or the European eel. Could the Loch Ness Monster simply be an eel which became stuck in the loch and kept growing? There are certainly eels here, but we know from episode 5, Eels Under Melbourne, that if an eel is stuck and can't find the river, then it's still able to slither over land, as explained by the esteemed and sultry Dr. Alex Faustino. So, does Loch Ness have regular sightings of particularly large eels, a propensity for unusual light displays and mirages which look like 30-foot aquatic reptiles, and an uncommonly large number of floating logs? Maybe. Or perhaps it's our minds playing tricks on us, allowing us to get collectively deeper and deeper into a belief to the point that we can't deny it. I'll quote naturalist and local legend Adrian Shine of the Loch Ness Project, who suggests that most people who claim to see the Loch Ness Monster are probably telling the truth. He puts it like this.
There will be Loch Ness Monster as long as you want there to be one. But you should use some ingenuity, some thinking, if you like, a little science, to actually work out what sort of monster it might be.
I didn't know I could make that voice, and I'm sorry because that was horrible. The most cutting-edge scientific methods have been applied to find out once and for all if there is a monster living at Loch Ness. There was a decade-long camera trap investigation starting in 1962. In the 1970s, Adrian Shine took a team of his colleagues with him underwater. Oh, that makes it sound like he drowned them. No, he took them down in a submarine to begin the underwater investigation. Then, in 1987, there was Operation Deep Scan, again led by Adrian Shine, a sonar search stretching all the way from one end of the lake to the other, and they didn't find anything. And then, on the 27th of March 1988, Jessica Ellen Cornish, known professionally as Jessie J, was born in Chadwell Heath, East London. She became the first British female artist to have 6 singles from one album reach top 10 in the UK. And that brings us into this century. Well, most of us. Tradwives are stuck in the 1950s, and you know what? They can stay there. Recent decades have seen some thrilling scientific insights into the world's most iconic body of fresh water. One such thrilling technique is that of environmental DNA, or eDNA. You may know this term because it was explained beautifully in episode 3 by Electric Fish, Dr. Cassandra Ford. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a word. Electric fish expert Dr. Cassandra Ford. The principle is, organisms are constantly leaving traces of their DNA in their environment, be it, for example, from the loss of dead skin, hair, or by excreting. The act of shedding DNA is known as sloughing. Even these traced amounts of sloughed DNA can be picked up through sampling. It's this kind of technology which means that there are fewer and fewer places for the Loch Ness Monster to hide. This study was led by Professor Neil Gemmell, who hails from the University of Otago in New Zealand. The results came in. They identified ducks, cattle, humans, all 13 species of fish known to inhabit the waters, and, as for a large prehistoric reptile, drumroll please, Captain, negative. But I don't think Professor Gemmell considers the study to be a failure. Here's a quote from the man himself.
Do you know, if I can get 1 or 2 of these kids interested in every class excited by science, and then I thought, okay, I'll multiply that by the country, and then by the world, and I thought, gee, this might be the most important thing I ever do in my career. It wasn't about searching for monsters in any way, shape or form. It was really about trying to get people excited about science. Excited about the new technology of eDNA. How we could study biodiversity, literally from a cup full of water, and understand much of the biology that existed within that place. How you do science. How you establish hypotheses. What sort of controls you would need, what sort of reproducibility you'd need.
Well, there you go. Naysayers might suggest that next time he could use a larger cup, or perhaps the Loch Ness Monster was hiding on that day. But that's kind of the point of the Loch Ness Monster. It's impossible to discover. It doesn't matter what the science says, there's a shifting goalpost, and that's both the frustrating part about it and the beauty of it. In the British Isles, the Highlands of Scotland and the Great Lochs represent a kind of awe-inspiring ancient wilderness where it's hard not to let the imagination run free. The sun's nearly gone down now. I'd better make my way back to the shore before it's completely vanished. No sign of any monster, but I'm at peace with it living in my mind. And in that sense, it could be lurking underneath my boat right now, wondering who would be foolish enough to come out here all alone. As we head back to shore, here's another of the thrilling modern scientific techniques to be applied to Loch Ness. It's statistics. I know it might sound like I'm taking the piss, but I promise I'm not. Statistics is really fun and interesting. Let's turn to the work of statistical and aquatic ecologist Dr. Charles Paxton of the University of St Andrews, who uses statistics to study things like whale populations around the world. He says he thinks that people are put off by maths and statistics. He says about maths and statistics, he says people find it boring. Sorry. Excuse me, I seem to have dozed off there for a second. As I was saying, Dr. Charles Paxton has this crazy belief that people find maths and statistics boring.
What?
No way. No way. And he says that statistics can give us answers not only to the existence of monsters, but also about the people who see them. Dr. Paxton points out that if we define an aquatic monster as an undiscovered marine or freshwater species at least 2 meters in length, a fair definition in my view, and we consider the rate at which species have been and continue to be discovered, then we can say with near certainty that somewhere in the world's oceans, or lakes, or perhaps the swamps of Southeast Asia, monsters unknown to science are hiding. They probably aren't in Loch Ness, because it's been studied intensively for decades, and there's still no sign. But statistically, somewhere there are monsters. Even in this century, there are large marine mammals which have been discovered. Perhaps a new species of shark is hiding in the Mariana Trench. And as for the people who are seeing a monstrous creature here at Loch Ness, what can we make of the pattern of sightings? There have been thousands of reports over the years. Lots of people saw it in the 1930s, and there was another spike in the 60s and 70s, and from what I gather, people back then were open-minded. And now we can see that most sightings happen in the summer, when tourists are active. And not only that, but based on the times people make their sightings, we can say that the Loch Ness Monster is most active in the mid-morning and mid-afternoon, and she has a break at lunchtime. Or perhaps that's a reflection of tourist behaviour. Well, either way, that's a very charming application of statistics there, Dr. Paxton. I will now stand up on this rickety boat in an act of frivolity, in the celebration of the joyous world of statistical analyses, and I shall deliver a quote which came right out the mouth of Dr. Paxton.
Scientists often say you can't use things like reports of the Loch Ness Monster to reach interesting conclusions. Yet I would argue that, under special circumstances, we could use these Loch Ness Monster reports to tell us about the conditions under which Loch Ness Monster is actually seen.
Oh! Ow! My head. Ugh. It's night time. Did I fall asleep from talking about statistics? I can see the Milky Way. The water's even darker than it was before, but now it's covered in stars. What the? This is not real. This is wishful thinking. Then why doesn't it feel like wishful thinking? I don't want this. Please don't eat me.
Now what would I want to do that for? No one ever comes to visit me at night, and the night is the time that I feel alive.
You're the Loch Ness Monster.
And who are you?
Nature disturbed. You look how I imagined. Except, you're not that monstrous looking.
What?
Nothing. I meant, you look great. I've been searching for you.
You've been looking for me. So, to what do I owe the pleasure?
Well, it's just, people say you aren't real. And by people, I mean myself. I was saying that.
Well, that's the question, isn't it? Is anything real? And what makes you say that I'm not so real?
Well, it's just, nobody's ever seen you before, and I guess they've been investigating for years and there's not been any proof.
If you're sure that I'm not real, how can you be sure that you're not real?
Wishful thinking, I guess.
How?
How come you've never been seen?
I have, by those who I let see me.
Well, in that case, I'm flattered. Aren't you worried that they'll find you? Scientists. They can use things like eDNA now, and statistics.
Statistics.
I know, boring, sorry, never mind. But doesn't that worry you? That they'll find you?
No.
Why not?
They'll never find me. Because I'm not real. And this isn't real. But you are. And you've fallen and bumped your head. And it's very cold. So you'll be needing to wake up. Or you might die out here.
And how do I do that?
Now that I don't know the answer to. Bye-bye, nature disturbed. Enjoy watching the stars, but not for too long, so as you don't end up staring at them forever.
Goodbye, Loch Ness Monster. Wake up. Well, here I am, in my kitchen sink. Although there's a ladle up my arse, this warm soapy water is rather lovely. Who am I kidding? So is the ladle. I'll level with you. That was one of those trips where I seem to have undergone some kind of major trauma, because I can't really remember how it turned out. I think something happened on that boat. I remember talking about the geology of Loch Ness, and the history of the monster sightings, and eDNA, and statistics. Sorry, statistics. And then, I can't really remember much after that. It's funny, I set out on that journey feeling like I could say for sure that there was no Loch Ness Monster. But now... never mind. I'm sure it's nothing. Like one of those niggling feelings in the back of my mind. It's just, when I woke up in the boat, I was back on shore, except the boat was quite far up the beach, and there were no drag marks in the sand or along the pebbles, so I don't think I dragged it and then climbed back inside. It was like I'd been placed there, or lowered from a height, by a crane or something big or... Anyway, that's all for today's episode. I'd like to thank Damon McMillan for the music, and thank you, from the bottom of my swollen for listening. As usual, I will end with a poem. This one is called The Duckling and the Swan. Upon the flat surface of Loch Ness, a floating duckling turned to address his old friend the swan, for the swan was the one who told stories the other ducks tried to suppress. The duckling said, "Swan, what's going on? For the older ducks just won't confess. They seem to know something, but they won't tell me what, about something down there in the depths." The swan said, "Young duck, you are too young to know, far too young to know what lies beneath. For below lies a secret not even prime ministers know, from Churchill to Sir Edward Heath. And nor any monarch, James Charles or Elizabeth, nor any subject, from London to Keith. You are too young to know that the old tales are true, about a creature with dragon-like teeth, and a serpentine body, green eyes and gnarled skin, and a long neck which beggars belief. This creature laid eyes upon dinosaurs, and has lived for millions of years. It travelled through time, unscathed and unharmed, and there's nothing on earth that it fears. You are too young to know, so I won't say a thing. Young duck, you can wait till you're older." The duckling snapped back, "You're just trying to scare me. I don't believe you." Then the water turned colder. Within a fleeting moment, long enough only for the duckling to see his short life flash before his eyes very briefly, and for the old swan to realise for less than a second that his tall tales were in fact a reality. An enormous set of primordial jaws erupted from the water, and in doing so had swallowed the two birds whole. After another moment's passing, the flat surface of the loch belied the presence of a great leviathan, now satiated, swimming back down into the murk.